Auburn won against Ole Miss yesterday. At least that's what the scoreboard tells me, 35-28. SEC officiating in Auburn games has been a disaster, just a total Hindenburg-level disaster. I am not, as I've told you before, and those of you who have watched the show even before I got to 24/7, I don't do a couple of things I never do. I never waste time on the show questioning officiating, mainly judgment calls. Like, I'm not the one sitting here saying, oh, they missed a hold in the third quarter. And I don't question play calling. There have been multiple situations in Auburn games this year now where I believe in at least two instances, if not more, outright wins have been taken away from Auburn's opposition and given to them. Yesterday was just the latest example. Now listen, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to bash Auburn for that. I mean, it's not like Auburn's out there making the calls. So they're playing the hand they're dealt. So we've acknowledged the SEC officiating, okay? It's a joke. It's beyond a joke. It's a shame that a conference that touts how much money they rake in every year and how high profile that brand is, and you still got guys, all due respect, officiating in this conference on Saturday that are working in an office on Tuesday or Wednesday. They have normal jobs during the week. They don't employ actual officials. They do it the same way high school associations do. They just get paid a little bit more money. I don't like that because that is conveniently used to shield SEC officials from having to be accountable to you, me, to anyone, to media, whatever. And also it lets the league office, if it really comes down to it in their back channels, it lets them say, I mean, come on now. It's not like these are NFL officials. I mean, these are part-time guys. Oh, we'll hire full-time guys. How about that? So anyway, as for Auburn, could be 1-4, but the fact of the matter is they're 3-2 right now, and here's the complimentary aspect. In order to benefit from a blown call, you have to be in position to benefit from it. If Auburn were down 3 scores yesterday, that wouldn't have mattered, is my point. Just like back in 2013. Kick six, the prayer at Jordan-Hare. Well, if they were down 3 scores, neither one of those things would have mattered in terms of the outcome. So at the very least, Auburn puts themselves in position to benefit from this. We got what we expected in this game. Outside of the controversy, the final was largely what we expected. We took Auburn. We thought Auburn would win. We thought they would go on the road and sort of balance things out a little bit. And they road tank Bigsby in the run game. 23 passes, 47 runs yesterday from Auburn. Bigsby, true freshman out of Callaway High School, 24 carries again, 129 yards. He averaged 5.4 per carry. But how about this little caveat? Dive into the box score a little bit further. Bo Nix been struggling a little bit through the air, turning the ball over. Well, the surest way to stop that is don't let him throw it a whole lot and run him more, since he wants to run anyway. Nix had 10 carries for 52 yards yesterday. So they ran the ball all afternoon yesterday. Now, some very, very bad news out of Auburn tonight is their right guard, Brandon Council, is apparently out for the year. I think I saw Malzahn announce that as we were coming on air. So that is the position they can least afford to lose guys at any point, but especially with LSU coming to town. But every one of these games, I don't care how they win it, every one of these games they win, it just buys them a little bit more time. And this is a team that probably has no business being above 500 right now, but they are. And so we're not going in reverse. You can only go forward. 3-2. There sit the Auburn Tigers, 3-2. Now, Penn State had an implosion of their own yesterday. They lose on the road at Indiana, 36-35. This was the Spiderweb Special of the week. The Spiderweb Special is a pretty new metaphor on the show, but it's age-old in philosophy. And what happens is you're playing a team that maybe you out-roster, maybe the box score is so heavily tilted towards you, but there are critical factors that you don't take care of business with, and as a result, you walk straight into the spiderweb, and the spiderweb does to you what it does. I'm going to read to you some aspects of this box score, and you tell me how Indiana won this game. First downs, Penn State, 27-16 edge. Total yards, Penn State, 488 to 211 total yards edge. Rushing yards, Penn State 250, Indiana 41. Time of possession, 40 minutes 25 seconds for Penn State, 19 minutes 35 seconds for Indiana. They doubled them up in time of possession. So you might ask, how in the world did Indiana win this game? How did Penn State walk into the spiderweb? -1 turnovers, 100 yards in penalties, 0 of 3 on field goals, and did not kneel at the end of the game instead of going in for a touchdown, which would have ended the game. Literally would have ended the game. So as much as we talk about officials handing Auburn a win, Penn State themselves had at Indiana a chance to win a game, which Indiana ultimately went on to do. I don't really know what more to say here. I mean, it's not like we're going to sit here and ask the question, has Indiana arrived? Is Penn State's season over? It's nothing like that. Penn State's got a chance to atone for all this Saturday. They play Ohio State at home. Ohio State, I know Circa opened them at 8. That wasn't staying under single digits. So that is now an 11-point line. Ohio State favored by 11 on the road. I was disappointed in this outcome. I really was. We were confident in Penn State. And looking at that box score, I mean, that's what we expected. You can't account for turnovers. You can't account for penalties. And anyone who pretends they can is lying to you. But, we went 5-1 yesterday. This is the only game we lost, Penn State minus 5.5. When that kid did not kneel and he sort of accidentally scored a touchdown and they went up by 8, if we would have won that game in that manner, and that's how we went 6-0, scratch that. It never would have happened. That just doesn't happen for us. So 5-1, best we can do. That's fine. Ohio State throttled Nebraska. Body bagging special here, 52-17. I want to stress something. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when Alabama just pasted Texas A&M? It may have been like the final score, close to this final score. And everyone wanted to write Texas A&M off. And we came on the show the following Sunday, I think, and we said Texas A&M's not a bad team. There are a couple of areas they don't meet the freeze point in, so therefore they were never going to stop Alabama. Well, that's Nebraska. I don't think Nebraska's a bad team. I want to really stress to you, Nebraska's not terrible. Ohio State's just that good. Nebraska's not a bad team. If you'll watch them the rest of the year, I think they'll probably be undervalued because people's first impression of a team, like people are still thinking about Mike Leach beating LSU. They hadn't done anything since. Your first impression tends to be your lasting impression. That's why a lot of people lose money betting this stuff. You got to go week to week on this. You watch Nebraska 4 or 5 weeks down the road, probably be a pretty decent team, be a tough out, and you'll say, well, in retrospect, I mean, here's Ohio State still beating people's brains in. So that's not a bad loss. Not nearly as bad as it looks in retrospect. Justin Fields is pretty incredible. 20 of 21, either 76 or 26. Either way, it's good. 2 touchdowns. And much like Bo Nix, but only a whole lot better than Bo Nix, 15 runs, 54 yards on the ground. Now, one place I was very underwhelmed with Ohio State, and remember, we pick apart the elite teams with a fine-tooth comb here, and I'm not saying anything Buckeye fans didn't see. Really underwhelmed by them at running back. Granted, one game, but Sermon and Teague, neither went over 100 yards, just kind of underwhelming. But again, I made the Alabama comparison. What were we saying after a couple of weeks with Alabama? Right now, all we're seeing in Najee Harris's praise, and we're talking about Alabama having the best offensive line they've ever had. Well, the first 2 weeks, we were saying, where in the world's the run game for Alabama? So, not surprised here, and certainly think that the run game will improve week over week. But again, as I said, they go to Penn State, they being the Buckeyes, go to Penn State Saturday, and they are 11-point favorites as we speak right now. Now, let me get to one that was our best bet of the week, and boy, did a lot of you take exception with it in the comment section. Not after the game, mind you, but a lot of you came for me beforehand and said, oh, I'll see you here afterwards, and in typical fashion, they only show up when we're wrong. Missouri beat Kentucky 20-10, and I'm going to tell you why, because Missouri is better than Kentucky. And we thought that going into the week, and that's why we took the 5 points, but we also told you we're taking Missouri to win the game outright. So let me tell you what it looks like when you're better than another team. 421 to 145, that was the yardage edge for Missouri. 26-8 was the first down edge. I'm going to hit you with probably the craziest stat. This is the padlock stat from this game. Missouri ran 92 plays yesterday. Kentucky ran 36. Kentucky could have played till Wednesday, and it probably still wouldn't have caught up with how many plays Missouri ended up running. And a 43-10 to 16-10 time of possession, or 40 or 50, whatever. Yeah, 16-50. So, man, this was brutality. You would think by looking at that box score, they probably won by about 30. Turnovers do not last. I tried to explain this. Okay, Kentucky was riding a wave of forced turnovers 2 weeks in a row, and that's wonderful. They are totally random. Even the teams who look like they have made it part of their DNA, turnovers are not part of any team's season-long DNA. When you have a team like Kentucky that is limited at quarterback and who is winning at the moment because they're forcing turnovers and they're +2, +3, it's not going to last. So when you have that situation, combined with a situation in Missouri where you had a very up-and-coming situation at quarterback with Bazelak, who we're really high on, and we've been higher on Missouri than most people have, Missouri's better than Kentucky. You just didn't know it because what was your impression? You still remember them getting smashed by Alabama in week 1. What do you think would happen if Bama played Kentucky Saturday? So don't hold that against anyone. It's just skewing your impression of these teams. So Missouri wins, our best bet hits, and now we move on. Clemson, I wanted to touch on this right quick. They end up running away from Syracuse 47-21. Listen, don't fall for this stuff. It happens every year. Don't fall for it. Don't be that guy or that girl who walks into the water cooler tomorrow morning and starts talking about all the vulnerabilities you see with Clemson. Clemson's got vulnerabilities. They're going to be there all year. An experienced and talented offensive line like Ohio State or Alabama has, they're going to be able to have some success against Clemson. They're ultra talented, but they're ultra young in their defensive front. This wide receiver group is not on the same level as Clemson teams of the past. This is nothing we learned yesterday. This is stuff, if you've watched that team, you already know. Having said that, they're one of the very best in America. And I don't really care how they played against Syracuse. Nothing whatsoever. Let me start that sentence over so everyone hears it. Nothing whatsoever about Clemson versus Syracuse will have any bearing on Clemson versus fill in the blank for the conference title game, Clemson versus fill in the blank for the playoff, or fill in the blank for the national title. Won't even be the same team. You know it, I know it, because we've seen it before. So those are the takeaways of the Clemson-Syracuse game. As for my Iowa State Cyclones, yeah, we fell yesterday. A hard-fought loss on the road, 24-21 to Oklahoma State. These are the two teams, for the record, that I picked to go to the conference title game, by the way. It had a very SEC feel. I don't know if many of you saw this game. You notice how everyone's talking about the high-flying offenses in the SEC? Anyone paid attention to what's happening in the Big 12? 24-21? Anyone paying attention to this? Both of these teams had over 220 yards on the ground. Both teams very run-heavy. Oklahoma State severely limiting Brock Purdy's ability to make anything happen through the air for Iowa State. I think the Cyclones 4.8 yards per pass yesterday. So how about this? Is it just a tag team situation or styles of play being handed off from one conference to the other? I don't know about that, but here's what I do know. The Big 12 is getting serious really quick. Oklahoma State, next 3 games versus Texas Saturday. They opened as a 3-point favorite. They're then at Kansas State, and then they're at Oklahoma. So that makes or breaks their season over the next 3 weeks. Looking really forward to that. Big 12's been fun to watch. To me, it's maybe not the highest level product in the world, but it's been really fun to watch.